Matter of fact, welcome everybody for this afternoon. I mean, this is a continuation of our adventure that started exactly a week ago. The Sustainability Committee has been hyperactive, I think, in celebrating Earth Day. And we have been providing a couple of events or to basically commemorate, celebrate, whichever way you want, to interpret that Earth Day. Before we start, I need to read the Declaration of Independence, is that? No. Okay, it's the evacuation policy. So let me go over this. If the alarm is activated for evacuation, the event facilitator, one of us, will call the concierge desk and find out whether we are supposed to evacuate or not, because the emergency may be somewhere else in the building. If it's determined that we need to evacuate, they exit the room first immediately. The people that can walk on their own, they don't need assistance, don't congregate here, just go out, okay? Hopefully it's not going to be raining or snowing, but and clear the area here. Next will be people that need some assistance, I mean wheelchairs and so on. And then once everybody's out, I will close the doors. Any questions about that? No, everybody already knows it by heart, so okay. So the event today is the one before the last. I know people are happy to celebrate that, at least for this year, or for this month, let's say. So the title of our meeting today is Local Farmers Speak. And about what do they speak about? About local, organic, nutritious, humane, and sustainable farming. I am going to introduce the two speakers, and then I will let them talk. And at the end of that, we will have a Q&A, and people can ask questions and so on, and so forth. Just to remind you, next Thursday, at the same time, we will have the last event, which is a celebration with art and performances of Earth Day, and everybody is invited to attend that as well. Our two speakers, let's see if I can control this from here. But you will see them because they are here. So the two are Pete Lefeo and Jay Armour, sorry. And I happen to know them through my daughter, which is very much into sustainability, and she has been a client and buying all kinds of things from them, including the shares for the CSA, okay? I'm just going to say a couple of words. Pete is a lifetime resident of the Hudson Valley, is that right? And he has been an agricultural entrepreneur and farmer for more than 50 years. And he has strong relations with all the community of farming in the region, the Cornell Extension. He served on the board of directors of the Ulster County Farm Bureau, and he started basically his farm from scratch in 1998, I believe, essentially. The second speaker is Jay Armour, which has a separate farm somewhere, not too far from here, in Gardner, and he has developed a very proficient no-till agricultural system in his farm, and both of them are very basically devoted to sustainable agriculture and sustainability in general. So before I give the floor to them, I want to invite Anne, which just told me she wrote a few things for them.
Pete and Jay are here today to enlighten us about farming a different way. As pioneers in this awesome region, your inspiration has surely been legion. Thank you.
So without further ado, we'll sit down and, Pete, let me take this off for a second. You can start.
I want to thank you all for inviting us here today. I don't get invited to too many things like this. Anyway, and this is a wonderful thing that you're doing with Earth Day. I mean, we were all really blessed to be able to have this life on this planet Earth, and it would be nice to see our grandchildren and their grandchildren go on with a good piece of it yet. Anyway, so I wanted to open with talking about sustainable and sustainability before I get into my farm. And first of all, in this country, they have a way of taking a word and morphing it into something that it didn't begin with. Sustainable hasn't gotten that too far out of range yet, but one of the things I like to mention is like homemade. Okay, homemade used to mean it was a little farm stand, and somebody there was in the kitchen next to the farm stand was making the jams and the things of this sort, pies, and then now you see advertised in the ag magazines you can buy frozen homemade pies from some factory in the Midwest. So we all have to be aware of what the spectrum of some of these words mean, like sustainable and organic and nutrient dense and so on. So sustainable itself, really has three levels. We have the level of the environmental sustainability, which is ecological consciousness and integrity. We have economic sustainability, which is the economic part. We okay? The economic part in regard to trying to keep our monies local in our local economy. Excuse me. And when they come out of other areas, it's good to see fair trade and stuff. Like you see these fair trade coffees and other items that come out of other countries, Central America, South America, even Europe now. That's all that stuff is very important. That that economic chain is fair to everybody right down from the top to the bottom. So anytime you are purchasing or supporting that, it's a little deal but a big deal. And then the toughest one of those three, social sustainability. I think we're getting there, but it's been a slow road. There's a lot more awareness in regard to gender and race and all of this these days, but you won't have full sustainability unless you have all of those things in harmony to a significant extent. So that's my little blurb about the word sustainable and sustainability so far. Anyway, the other thing is organic. All right. Organic originally, it's basically, if you look up the meaning in the dictionary, it's it's just relating or derived to living matter. All right, and then you can go a little bit further into the science part, and then this living matter has to contain carbon. Okay, and hence where carbon footprint eventually comes from. And so then you've taken this word organic and the living matter things and looked at the overall picture of agriculture, and you look at old agriculture and where agriculture started, and it was always about maintaining a healthy, lively soil, soil with life in it. That's how you got from one year to the next. There was no way to make a rapid or sudden change in that without maintaining that continuity from one season to the next. And that's what some of this organic agriculture started as, and then it began to move forward to become commercialized, and they're still doing the whole biological thing, but it's morphed into something a lot larger. But it's still, as far as I'm concerned, the way to go. I was convinced by that back in the early 90s when I met a fellow named Jack Baldwin, whose wife Marion is a resident here at this facility. And Jack was really my mentor to make the switch from commercial production, agriculture, and chemicals to really taking a hard look at what we were doing with the soil and our environment and all the little things that trickle down off of that. And so that was my inspiration to make the change in my career, and when I was looking for a farm and looking to move forward as a farmer, I wanted that to be our target goal. And so as we move forward with organics, there's no doubt, just like so many things, you have to keep within that spectrum. The organic is used to advertise all kinds of things that don't necessarily make all those sustainable connections that we already, that I earlier spoke of. And so, I feel like any little bit that you can do towards that to support organic farmers and whatever little piece that they're trying to sustain in that organic spectrum is a very good thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about, let's see, where am I at? I want to get off the subject slightly here in regard to sustainability and organics and carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is really a shorthand word for all the negative inputs that contribute to our atmosphere and greenhouse gases and global warming. The carbon footprint, we on our farm, for instance, or I was just looking at even like in industry today, organic, or I'm sorry I'm jumping around, but I jump around a lot, but I hope you can follow me. Our industries today, one of the things, electric cars, wonderful thing, but they have to come from somewhere. So I did do a little reading this week because I wanted to make sure I wasn't completely out in outer space. It's hard to, there's no free lunch. I'm sure all you know that old saying. There's no free lunch. If you have an electric car, that battery is something that has to be manufactured and processed. And there's both sides of the story if you are cruising the web and looking at environmental issues. There's the radicals and there's the non-radicals, and someplace in the middle there's kind of what's going on. And I noticed that they said, like, let's say for instance, somebody stated that if you one battery for a Tesla sedan, the manufacturing of it is equivalent to driving a standard sedan car. Its contribution, its equivalent contribution to its carbon footprint to the atmosphere is just like driving a standard sedan car for 8 years. But that's not really true, because I looked into it further. That sounded a little radical. But it is equivalent in most cases to driving a standard sedan car for about 2.5 to 3 years. So it's not like we're getting completely away from it. There is no tailpipe, there's no emissions coming out, but the inputs that go in to produce that car are still there, okay? And we still have to be aware of that, when we're looking at this picture. And when so one of the things I saw was it depends on where the manufacturer is also. And who's making these batteries. They make these batteries in the US, and Tesla makes them. These batteries are contribute maybe 4,500 pounds of carbon to our carbon footprint, one battery. But yet if that same battery is made in Asia, it's 7,500 pounds because of the lack of constraints and rules and regulations and so on. So it really goes to show you that that's a pretty big difference. It's darn near double. So some of these rules and regulations that we have in this country, although constraining economically in some cases, are really very, very good for all of us. So, and you know, that's my little blurb about our carbon footprint and sustainability and organic in general. Now I want to talk a little bit about my farm. So as Yakov said, I made that transition from commercial production agriculture, working for some pretty large operations in the valley, to buying our own place and starting this adventure into organic farming in 1998. We bought the land in 95, and in 98 we started to grow a few odds and ends on there. My wife wouldn't let me buy a tractor until I had a significant account, you know, no matter what we were growing. So we happened to land an account at the Culinary Institute of America, and that was good enough for her to say, okay, you can move forward now. You don't have to borrow anybody's tractor or use a walk behind. So that got us going. We worked very hard. She was a full-time teacher. I was still working full-time on another farm, and we were using all our spare time to get this operation up and going. Again, I'll refer back to my mentor, Jack Baldwin. Jack really taught me how to be thrifty and to be my own trendsetter, not to look at the particular trends that were out there. And so there was many things that we did to, at the time, you know, to cut costs, but we were really cutting our inputs and keeping our own carbon footprint in place. Things such as, one of the big ones was, I've never been a full proponent of growing a lot of my own vegetable starts, because a lot of these vegetable starts have to be started in the season up here to be put out in the field on time, when it requires a lot of fossil fuels and other inputs, the right greenhouse structure, all the parts and pieces that go to that, and so on. So we often did our own vegetable starts outside under very inexpensive row covers, and we also subcontracted to certified organic greenhouse growers down in Maryland and Delaware. These guys were prepared for it. They'd already made their investment in a house. I didn't have to make an investment in one and add to the manufacturing of another piece of equipment. They actually partnered with me on many of the varieties that we grew, so I didn't always have a large investment in the particular seed varieties. And basically it would take one tank of diesel fuel in my truck to drive down to them and one tank to drive back. And because I didn't need my plants until May, he was able to start them at the end of May. He was able to start them at the very end of March or first week in April. They're 2 zones lower than us, so he basically didn't have to use any fossil fuels to grow my plants. You know, it wasn't something that stood out, but over time, when we started commingling ourselves with, you know, a lot of people who were concerned about these issues, I started to look at what we were doing and saying, hey, you know, maybe that little bit is making an impact. So that was, you know, one of the things, though, that again, my mentor Jack, you know, was always saying, you know, always look outside the box, try to be thrifty. And I do have to say there was a bit of personal. There was, you know, I was kind of like, I didn't really want to start working in January or February either. You know, that was a little bit of it, you know, selfishness on my part. Once we would get going in April, it was basically a cattle drive until Thanksgiving. And so I really didn't want to add another month or so to that. And a little side story to that, my sons would go down with me, one or the other, to pick up the plants. and they'd see me hand this guy an $8,000 check, for 600 or 700 flats of plants. And they were like, "You're paying him way too much money. This is ridiculous." And I said, "Well, I have a lot of reasons for it." And I said, "But I'll tell you what, if you guys want to build a small greenhouse, propagation house, yourselves, I'll even subsidize some of the seed costs, and I'll pay you 10% more than I'm paying him. And you're welcome to do it." Well, we never did see that greenhouse because they realized how much work it is and how much nicer it is to get those 2 last ski weekends in March, as opposed to worrying about an alarm going off in the middle of the night because the heat went off. So that was a little story I used to tell a lot of our farm to table dinner people when it came to talking about our inputs and how the little pieces that we were trying to do with the environment to contribute to non-global warming. And the other thing is that as far as like direct inputs, you can buy some some really good organic blended fertilizers that are manufactured in the Midwest, and there's actually a couple of good facilities here in New England too. And we were buying those in the beginning. When we started to get bigger, it started to get not so economically feasible to do that, even in conjunction with cover crops. A cover crop is a crop that you would put down in the field to build up the soil biology and so on, and to maintain, your soil biology. And so we started to try to, again, think outside the box. And there was a local egg producer in Monroe, and they had about 300,000 chickens. They were 4th generation egg farmers down there. Ace Egg Farm was the name of the place. And we found out that they were looking for a place to dump their manure. They were actually dumping it in landfills before they started to sell it to farmers. We were one of the first ones to knock on their door, and myself and my buddy Paul Colucci, who grows a lot of forage crops. So I decided to take a look at what would it take and what would the impact be if we started using these manures on a large scale. And also we had to consider our certification. You're not allowed to put any type of unprocessed composted manure on your land for at least 120 days before you harvest a crop. So we had to figure out how does that fit into our cropping program. And after looking all that over and coming up with an outline, we decided we could start putting this stuff on. We got to get it on in December, and we were putting it right on over top of our winter cover crops in most cases. At the time, we were buying a ton of chicken manure from them for $3 a ton. It takes about 5 tons to the acre to bring the nitrogen levels up and the other things to grow a commercial crop of vegetables. So we weren't the popular people in the neighborhood that time of the year, because we were getting anywhere between 15 and 25 triaxle dump truckloads of chicken manure in. And but it took that kind of quantity to make things happen. And so we started doing that, and we had someone write us an email who was a concerned customer. I understand that you're using chicken manure. Well, what's that impact? How does that impact our food and other impacts? And so I wrote her a letter back to tell her that, what I just told you. These guys were throwing this nutrient-rich, material into a landfill, and it wasn't being used at all. And here we're buying this material from them, so they're getting something. I hire a local trucker, who's trucking it up to me, and we're putting it on our ground, and we're growing a lot of vegetables with it for the community and the region. So I said, I said, I'm inside all the parameters of the certification, and I don't think that's a bad thing for anyone. So I explained it, and I think she was pretty happy to hear that was a good thing. So that's a little sustainable story that I feel has the economics in it, and the farming aspect in it, and maybe even a little piece of the social aspect in it, because we're all trying to get along, at the same time. So we continued that, and unfortunately, Ace Egg Farm realized that this is a pretty good market, and we went from $3. 4 years later, it was $6. And then they actually closed their doors because it just they weren't sustainable themselves in regard to maintaining the business with the price of eggs and the price of grain and stuff, and they were getting tremendous pressure from New York City, being in Monroe, to with the land that they had, to give it up, and there was nobody coming behind the last person in that family, so they ended up closing their doors. But before they closed their doors, the last year we bought the material from them was $9 a yard. Yeah. So, but it was okay. It was still a lot less expensive when we had to cover 25 to 40 acres than it would have been buying this other material in, which basically, even the Vermont place is bringing blood meal in from Ohio, and gypsum in from Maine, and the stuff is, all the bits and pieces are coming from all over. And the biggest contributor to global warming in our country is the transportation business. The commercial transportation part of it is probably the bigger part, but we're all sinners in some way if we're taking a plane somewhere or driving our car somewhere, and there's some things you just can't get around. But the transportation business, the commercial transportation business itself, is the biggest contributor to global warming in this country right now. So I thought, when you look at all those parts and pieces have to come to that plant, and they have to combine it, they have to bag it, and it has to be shipped. It's a lot of inputs, on the ground. And the one thing we did have to watch was, chicken manure has certain attributes that can be negative, high in phosphorus, so on and so forth. So we were on a very intensive crop rotation to put crops in upon soil testing that would eat up some of the stuff that was high and leave some of the stuff that we needed to get back to a normal level. So we paid very close attention to what crops we put where, and then we also did a lot of liming to maintain an even pH, so the soil is happy with all its Cation Exchange. That's a whole other thing there, the electrical exchange in the soil that keeps the biology going. The other thing that we've always looked at is our equipment. We were, Jay's done a marvelous job with his permaculture, but I just wasn't trained in that school, and so I went the other route. But we always try to be mindful in regard to the size of the equipment we bought. Used equipment that could be remodified, so we weren't buying new equipment. There are a lot of our tractors are all high horsepower tractors, but a lot of my vegetable grower friends thought I was crazy, but we were buying these fruit tractors that were for the fruit industry, which is a much narrower, compact tractor for getting down these aisles and up and down the vineyards and orchards. But I saw it as we had all these multiple crops, upwards of 50 different crops. We needed to minimize the amount of ground we were on doing those crops, but we needed tractors that could sustain themselves for 8 to 10 hours a day, 4 to 6 days a week. And these tractors were made for that. So, and the other piece to the tractors was the particular ones that we sought out this John Deere model was they had in the transmission for operating the tractor itself and the implements that were fastened to it that were powered by the tractor, and economic, what they call the 540E. Basically, that mode allows the tractor to run at a much lower RPM and to do all the same work that another tractor would do at a much higher RPM, saving fuel, saving wear and tear, which again, you're buying parts and all this kind of stuff. So those are all little things that we tried to consider as we moved along. A lot of it driven by economics, but they say, what's the old saying of form and function? Quite often form and function is a very beautiful thing. And so I think some of the economics that drove us was a sort of a form and function. And at the same time, we were being thrifty in regard to our carbon footprint. Let's see, we got into that. How far am I? 5-6 minutes? Huh? I'm okay. All right. We rented land. We didn't own a lot of land. We found we needed to rent more land, so not just for production, but to maintain this more intensive crop rotation. That was good for some of the people in the area too, because they had fallow land. It was sitting there not doing a whole lot. We were rotating our crops into that land. We were rotating our crops out of that land and then putting different covers on that were good for bees and things like this when we weren't there. And it also put a few bucks in their pocket, or we were willing to work with an agricultural tax exemption for them too, in some cases. Right now, the farm, let's see, we had that farm, we started in '98, we peaked in 2010. We had a disaster in 2011 with the Hurricane Irene, which knocked us off our feet. I tried to gain some ground after that. At that point, I was in my 50s, still a baby. But my younger son would have been, as far as the farm and the family, my younger son would have been the one, my son Ian, to step up to the plate and maintain the level that we were farming at. But the disaster really had an effect on him emotionally, to see all that hard work and see everything go. So he bowed out at that point. Actually, he bowed out very gracefully. He didn't leave all at once. The following year, he told me that very thing I just told you. And I said, look, this business is not for everybody. So I'm not going to say you got to stay here by any means. You got to love it to be in it. And so he, the following year, worked 2 days a week and did a market. And then the following year after that, he did 1 market a week. But he always was there to help us weld something, or to knock down some ground for us, or to move a truck, or help me fix a truck or a tractor, and so on, when he wasn't busy with building his current business, which is he's a very successful harbor business right now. My son Peter, we brought him back in. He was out in California doing things with his friends from school, growing things that you may become legal now. And he decided that since Ian bowed out and it looked like we didn't know what direction we were going in, that he would come back and take a shot at it. And so anyway, he did, but he found out that, and we found out that although he has a propensity and has the skill set to be a farmer, it's not his bag, because he doesn't like working on Sundays, and he doesn't like getting something started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for the next day, and he likes taking birthdays off. So it just wasn't his thing, and so we started looking I'm just trying to let you know where we are currently. We started looking around seriously for somebody to lease the farm, and that was a pretty big task because there's a lot of young people who are tickling the belly of agriculture but aren't really in it. So anyway, I'm not knocking these little farms. They're very important to the community, and they do contribute. But I wanted somebody to step in there so I could like kind of pull away and not have to go over and do something every day for them. And we after about looking at all these different land links that are connecting farmers to land, farmers to farmers, and farmers to land. Probably went through 100 different farmer profiles, beat it down to 4. We actually connected with somebody after about 2 years of looking, and we brought them on board, and we were pretty happy with them. They were very professional and very capable. They didn't have the friendliest bedside manner that my wife and I would have liked to see, but it was a business agreement, and there was yet time to build a relationship. And out of the shadows comes my younger son again and says, "Oh, look, we don't want to see the farm go out of the family. So Mary Kate and I would like to buy the farm." So we were like, "Okay, well, we have a 5-year lease, and which has liabilities there." And I said, "Also, this is their dream, so we have to respect that." And so I said, until we have something on paper and we work this out estate-wise, I said, we can't say anything to them. And part of that was also I needed to maintain control, because I knew once they found out, we would not have control over whatever was going on. Unfortunately, my son and his wife couldn't keep themselves quiet. They said something to the growers. The growers were very upset. Needless to say, they still had the option of staying, but they didn't. They left at the end of the year, but not in enough time for us to plan for the following season. That left us kind of scattered. In the meantime, my daughter had come out of the shadows, and when my son Ian was still wanted to do something with the farm, but he didn't want to farm it full time because his arbor business is too successful. He wanted to do something so his children could have some of the same experiences that he had, and to keep it in the family. So Delaney said, "Geez, I'd like to do something with the stand and maybe do a little something if you don't mind." He said, "Great. That got to keep our hat in the ring, and I won't have to get overly involved." So we started to talk to a mentor to make sure that none of us were arguing in bad directions, and put all this in place. And 3 months after we were talking to the mentor, Ian decided that this wasn't the place he wanted to land anyway. So that's all happened in the last 2 years. But currently, my daughter has 2 business partners, and I'm mentoring them. It's tough. And she was a songwriter and in theater. So now she wants to be a farmer. She's been around it all her life, but it wasn't something. She never got her fingers dirty. Market was about as dirty as she wanted to get. But they're working it, and we're encouraging it, and and I'm trying to move away from it. I still have my hat in the ring in agriculture. I'm in the irrigation contracting business. I have delved in that business since 1990. That's what I did before I bought our farm. In between farming for somebody else and buying our farm, I did that for 5 years for a professional outfit out of Michigan, and so I'm doing that. And as I've said to other people, it's not because I'm tired or wore out yet, because I still do quite a bit of hard work in that business, and it keeps me connected with all the farmers in the valley and outside the valley too. I just got tired of the risks in the business. It's very high risk with your money on the line all the time. So, never take it for granted. A farmer, big or small, excuse my French, but he has his bottom on the line every day. And it takes real initiative and passion to pull it off. And today, a lot of business savvy too, because every nickel counts. But so that's our story, and that's where we're at, and that's some of the things I think about sustainability and organics, and be glad to answer any of your questions when we hear. Yeah, go ahead.
Where is your farm and market?
It's on Plains Road in New Paltz. Plains Road is when you go to leave New Paltz, you go through that last light and you go down the hill before the bridge. You'd make a left like you were going to the Water Street Market, and you just kind of meander along that road that meanders along the river, and we're on the dead end. That's one way to get there. The other way is you would go down South Putt, right, like straight across, and then come out on 32, make the left, make the right onto Jensen. When you stop at Jensen, where the old Blues nursing home used to be, you cross the street, and we're right there at the bottom of Cedar, right there. And it's a very beautiful spot. We never take it for granted. We really, really got blessed when we found this spot, and it's we always feel blessed that we're there, and we're in this community too. So anyway, do you want to wait for questions, or should I take a couple?
Let's unless it's yeah, we can have Jay makes a presentation.
Hold on to that thought.
Don't forget, take a note.
Yeah. Okay, she'll remember, don't worry. I know her, she remembers. Anyway, well, thank you folks for listening to all that. I hope you guys
It's well treated. I mean, and I thought that physics is complicated. Wow.
Well, we got some pictures.
I didn't have any pictures.
Oh. Put pictures on his website.
Yes.
Is there, okay, the drawing is in. Okay. So I'll tell you when to. Okay, so here's a nice shot of our farm. Our farm is Four Winds Farm. We're in Gardner. South of Island Corners, there's a side road called Merrimack Road, and we're a short ways down that. We grow on 4 acres of ground, and everything is permanent beds. We don't do any plowing or tilling. And you can see in this aerial shot, you can see all the various beds, the different crops in there. And so, let's go.
Oh, you want me to go back?
Yeah, let's just go back a little bit. Back again to the other picture. Okay, so what we do is we lay out compost on the beds. And the compost acts like a weed barrier, and it keeps the weeds from growing up. It also fertilizes the ground. And we use I'll show a picture later on, a tractor and a couple of people with pitchforks, and the tractor drives backwards, and we lay the compost on there, on the beds. We use about 30 yards of compost per acre, 120 yards altogether. which is a lot of compost. And so I've developed a way of making my own compost. If we go on to the next picture, what I do is we've got cows. And so during the winter time, we collect the manure from the cows, and I bring in horse manure. I mix those two together and use a forced air system of composting. And this is the fan that I use for my system. This is actually what happened was I went online and looked at various companies that were manufacturing composting systems. And I looked at the pictures and I said, oh, I think I can make something like that myself. And I had this old fan sitting in the barn, and it's what they call a duct fan. And ductwork is all square or rectangular. And so the opening where that white bucket is a square opening. And so I had to figure out how to make that square opening into a round opening to fit, to blow the air through the pipes that I have. So that was what I did. I put a square bucket on there and cut a round hole in the bottom, and then fed it into these pipes. So I've got these 4 rows of pipes that have holes in them. They're drain pipes for septic systems. And then the other part of the system is a timer. If you go on to the next picture. Well, it's not such a good picture of it, but it's a timer that will turn the circuit on and turn the circuit off for a certain amount of time. So it turns the circuit on, in other words, it turns the fan on for about 2 minutes. And then the off cycle is for about 20 to 30 minutes. So on for 2 minutes, off for 30 minutes, on for 2 minutes. And it just runs continuously that way. When I first came up with this idea, I'm looking online at all these pictures, I didn't know the thing about the timer. And so I just, the first system I created, I didn't have a timer. I had the fan going on all the time. And that's not a good thing to do, because too much air going into the pile actually cools the pile down. Basically what's happening is there's all these microbes in the manure. And if they get just the right amount of oxygen, then they get all excited, they do a lot of activity in there, and they generate heat. And that heat is very important in terms of breaking the manure down and killing the pathogens that are in there. And it enables us to use the compost in the vegetable gardens. If we go into the next picture, that's one of those piles that I've created now. So I lay the pipes out. I actually put wood chips on the bottom, and then I pile up the manure in that pile like you see there. And it's pretty miraculous. It just heats up, and it's like magic. But you get the right things in there, and the microbes are all in there, and it works. And the pile will get up to about 150, 160 degrees. And the other thing is, it's really neat about this whole system, is you can actually control how hot it'll get by manipulating your times on that on the blower. And I can do this in the wintertime or the summertime. It doesn't matter what the air temperature is. The key is getting that oxygen into there, the right amount of oxygen, and it heats up. Now, I think the next picture, okay. We took this whole idea, and this is people that enjoy this a little bit. One place where we could use that heat is in a greenhouse. And so that's what we do. This is a chamber inside the greenhouse. And if you go into the next picture, we bring that manure into there. Actually, I don't have a good picture of it, but there's a pipe running along the bottom of this thing, just like those pipes I had for the pile outside, so that I can push air through the manure after I bring it in. But if you go on to the next picture, okay, there's Sam bringing a wheelbarrow full of manure into that chamber. This whole process takes us about a day altogether. And actually it's not a day, it's 6 hours. So it's not a full day. And I don't really, every year I have to do this, and every year I say, there's gotta be an easier way or more mechanized way of doing it. But there really isn't. And so the wheelbarrow works pretty well. Going in is okay, it's just backing up, trying to walk backwards with the wheelbarrow because it's such a tight space there, you can't really turn around. It's a little challenging. Anyhow, so that, is that the next picture? I guess I don't have a picture of it. I use the same timer and control the temperature, and it gets up to about 150 degrees in there. And it heats day and night. It just sort of radiates out of that chamber, and it keeps the greenhouse warm enough to grow the seedlings that we need to grow in there. We move the manure in early March. So some of the seeds we start in February, late February, things like peppers and onions. But those are being started in another room that's heated, so we don't have to worry about the heat. So we bring that manure in the beginning of March, when those onions are going to start going out into the greenhouse itself. And the manure produces that heat for about 2 months. So from March to May, when we need that heat, it's keeping the space nice and warm for vegetable production, or for vegetable seedling production. Then everything goes outside, we plant everything outside, we kind of forget about the greenhouse. It kind of sits empty for most of the summer. And then in the fall, we dig up that, what is now compost. It was manure when it went in, but now, because it's been sitting there for so long, because it had maintained a high enough temperature, it's now compost. And we screen that. I think there's another picture, of 2 people. We screen by hand. We just push it through a frame of hardware cloth, and that becomes our potting mix for seedling production. So that's how we get that compost out of there, and then the following year we repeat the process. Let's see, what's the next picture? Okay, so I gotta get a drink of water here. So one thing we grow on our farm are a lot of seedlings, and we started out growing seedlings for ourselves, and then we found out that there was a market for good organic seedlings for backyard gardeners. And so this is a lot of tomatoes on the right side. I'm not sure what's on the left there, up on the bench. We go on to the next picture. And then this is our seedling sale. Well, actually this is pre-COVID seedling sale. where we just put everything out on the benches and people can come and shop. Thanks to COVID, we now do a lot of online sales, so people can pre-order, and then we package everything. People come by and pick up their orders. Next picture. So I just got a couple of pictures of crops in the beds, and I think there's one more picture. Oh yeah, the compost. This is how we lay out the compost on the beds. So I've got the hard job up there, just sitting on the tractor. It's actually harder than you think to back that thing up without, you know, getting on one bed or the other. And, you know, every once in a while I'll end up going a little crooked and I have to tell them, you know, the people that are unloading to get out of the way, because I have to drive it forward, straighten it out again, and then go backwards again. Next picture. So now I'm running up to the pile of compost that's up in the barnyard and to get another scoop. And Jenna and, oh, I forget her name, is sort of raking out the bed. And that's eventually where we're going to plant winter squash in those beds. This is some lettuce growing in a bed. The bed to the left has just been composted. Next picture. We're pretty well known for our tomatoes. We grow a lot of tomatoes. I forget how many pounds we grow, but we do a what's called a basket weave. We tie the tomatoes up and we mulch them heavily, and well, there we go. That's it. So I don't know if there are any gardeners here that would buy seedlings, but we have, you can actually order seedlings online. fourwindsfarmny.com is our website.
As a matter of fact, I mean, there is a little bit of a garden that people can get, a little plot that people do, and people that have the cottages have also their own backyard. There's some garden there. I mean, I'm not a good example because I didn't get around to fix it enough yet. But, well, I mean, I just want to say one thing. It's, having known Pete through my daughter, I know that he's not just concerned about the environment. He's a great supporter of social things in the Hudson Valley by contributing. I don't know if you are aware of that, but you did.
Actually, if I want to, I was sort of thinking about the thread that Pete finished off with in terms of where do we go from here? And, you know, he's kind of in the same situation I'm in, where each year I seem to get a little older. And, you know, each year, yeah, the ground is farther away. You know, I have to bend down more than I used to have to be able to do stuff. And I've got a manager that's working for me. And it's really good because she does all the planning, she does the planting, the harvesting, she goes to the markets, and I get to do the stuff that I enjoy doing. So I don't have to do a lot of the physical harvesting and so forth. But I don't know
What's next?
Yeah, I don't know what's next, because she did buy, she and her husband bought a farm in Pine Bush. She it was just land. They planned to build a house this summer, and so I probably won't keep her more than another 2 or 3 years before she sets off on her own project. After that, I don't know.
I'm Betsy Toole. I've been a CSA member of Pete's Farm for 12, something like that, years. And I remember in the newsletters you used to send out, you would comment about getting certified as an organic farmer. I wish you would talk a little bit about the process and what a farmer has to go through in order to get certified as an organic farmer.
Well, the first thing is you cannot have had any synthetic materials, agricultural materials, whether it's pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers, on your soil for 3 years. So if you bought a new piece of property and it had been a standard farm this year, being 2022, it would be 23, 24, 25. You probably wouldn't be able to get certified until 26, unless there were some particularly different circumstances that they would work with you on. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that you want to pick out a certifier that's bona fide and regional. We were originally, when the whole certification thing went down, I mean, we were certified with the, I'm trying to think of who they were out of Long Island. Before you had to be certified, we were just part of an organization. And then in 2003, all of that changed. They had the National Organic Program through the Ag and Markets, or the USDA, I should say. And so they set down a bunch of rules, and it was pretty confusing because they didn't really know what rules they were setting down and why. And so you needed to pick out a certification agency. And we went, at that point, NOFA was in the same confusion as far as I was concerned that the USDA was. So we ended up with one that had been looking at certification with farmers in the Midwest, the Organic Crop Improvement Association. So we were with them for from 2003 to 2004. Then we switched to NOFA because NOFA got on the bandwagon and had a plan, and that's when we were basically stuck with NOFA right on after that. But so you have the fact that your soil's got to be clean, and that you have a certifier now. They are basically chartered by the USDA, so they have to follow the rules that the USDA sets down and interpret them. Sort of basically like a county would interpret the state rules. You know, there's a little bit of fluctuation there. So they will put forth an application that requires you to list your, tell them what you're doing. You have to have maps of the farm. You have to create a crop plan. You have to have a rotational part of that crop plan has to have a rotation plan. Those are all the basic things it takes to get yourself started, and then you have the record keeping. They want to know what crop inputs are you using for pesticide, for fertilizer. There really aren't any herbicide organics at this point, a few. And there are pesticides that are organic. I mean, they're natural. They don't have the efficacy that the synthetic materials have, but they do have some use. Targeting the target on time is very important. Otherwise, they're not going to reach out and touch this disease or the insect you're trying to get rid of. There's a whole list of, through the National Organic Program that lists the insecticides and the fungicides that can be used that are organic. And most of these are listed through a testing organization called OMRI. Organic, what does it stand for? OMRI? I'm blocking. Yeah, Review Institute, Organic Materials Review Institute. So we create this crop plan, and then they also want to know your spaces. How big is your cooler? They want to know how big your storefront is. They want to know what are you going to use your truck for? Are you using it for just organics, or are you trucking other things in there? They want to know how, did I say greenhouse space? Your greenhouse starts have to be grown by you using organic seed or non-organic seed that's not treated with a fungicide if you can't find organic seed. They can be sticklers about the fact that any particular crop that you want to use, let's say a particular tomato, like Mountain Fresh, why did you buy non-organic seed? Because there is organic seed for Mountain Fresh. So they may call you on the carpet and ask you to explain that. Did they not have it? What's your reason? You have to put all that down. We would try to work around that because we grew 46 different crops, and so I had a full-on statement how we actually search for our seed and the reason why we pick out certain crops, and on. And I would try to let that be my blanket certificate to cover, because if I had explained where we got all those seed from all 46 different crops, it'd be like 16 pages. So in most cases they were pretty good about it unless they saw a red flag. That's important, very important to them, that you know genetically modified materials whatsoever. Okay, that's a real big no-no. Seed or any other products that you're using. Buffer zones are important. They all have to be named out on your mapping. How far away are you from the neighbors? What do your neighbors do? On and on. There's a lot of things that are real sticklers, and it all comes down to how well you present it, how thorough you present it, and then how agreeable the inspector is when he comes. Some guys are just looking for something, and other ones are cruising with what you have down if it's thorough and complete. We've had inspectors come, and the way we would grow a lot of our cold crop starts, we would just grow them in raised beds in the greenhouse. Shake seed out, put potting mix over top of it, grow them, and then dig that was the Jackson Baldwin method that he taught me. Bare root plants. You gotta be on your game, you gotta really know what you're doing horticulturally, you gotta have the right planter to plant them, but it's a very thrifty way to grow a lot of plants. And you can grow 40,000 broccoli plants in a 3-foot wide space that's 14 feet long. So anyway, they saw the little white specks in the mix from the perlite, and the vermiculite, and they're like, "What is that? Is that a chemical?" And I'm like, "No, it's for the potting mix. It's vermiculite. It's allowed." And so some people are looking for things, and some aren't. We were renting land. There was a small stream that we had to cross to get to it. There was a minimum of a 35-foot buffer before there was even a crop. And if it was 35 feet, the deer fenced in a crop. And well, the guy was there, he looked up the hill, and this guy mowed all of this ground. He had like 4 acres, this older fella, mowed it all. It was always beautiful. And he looks there and he goes, "That looks awful green. Do they have like a lawn treatment place come and spray that? Is that coming down here?" I go, "No, there's like 60 feet before you even get here, and a stream in between it." So the inspector could make it a little bit touchy, but they do require a lot of stuff. And then as you get further and further into it, you're building on layers and layers of your history that have to, you know, that, or it's an audit trail, basically, that you're accumulating.
So becoming a certified organic farmer is not an easy matter. So for those of us who are looking for organic food, we need to be aware of what goes into it.
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks.
it's a big deal. We used it. We felt our integrity was good enough, but there's no doubt that you have to have it for a marketing tool. You cannot get into certain places. We sold to the health food stores in the region. We did some bulk wholesaling with an outfit that was selling stuff in New York City to, not at the time, Whole Foods wasn't a thing when we were really selling a lot of stuff, but Park Slope Co-op in New York, this type of thing. And so not having that badge, those doors aren't gonna open for you.
If I can add to that, probably the hardest part about the organic certification is the first year, trying to, for a farmer, trying to figure out how to answer the questions. Each successive year, the application comes back, and there may be things that I need to clarify on there, but a lot of the basic information it remains constant from one year to the next. Also, I feel that the certification is important for the consumer, that the consumer really understand what the farmer is doing. There's a number of people, I won't say any names, who will say, oh yeah, our stuff is organic, and it's not. And they'll say it to their customers, and the customers will think, oh yeah, well, here's some people that really care about how they're growing food. And I always tell people that if somebody tells you that they're organic, ask to see their certification, because if they really are organic, they'll be carrying their certification with them. And that way you can be sure that they are doing what they say they are doing.
Any other questions? I mean, I have a quick one. Some places, like for instance, Woodland Pond, we are very interested in getting good quality food and so on. I mean, how much of your business can be accommodated in institutions which are not just private people?
Well, for our operation, we wouldn't really be interested in opening up to additional markets. We sell it to farmers markets, and those two markets keep us pretty busy.
Currently, in the past, we would jump on any little market, or this wouldn't be that little either, I'm assuming if we were to strike up a relationship on a weekly basis, we would jump on anything. But currently, with the transition of the farm, my daughter's gonna be sticking at home and selling stuff at the stand, maybe to a few small restaurants, but we couldn't do it right now. But there are outfits in the area, such as Hepworth Farms. There's a few others I don't come to the top of my head, but that could do that.
I wondered if there are CSAs here in the neighborhood.
What's a CSA?
Can you answer that?
Yeah, there are a number of CSAs. We used to have one, but we stopped operating it last year. There's Philly's Bridge,
My daughter's
and yours. Is Huguenot Street still?
I think they're still doing something on Huguenot Street.
I'm not sure who else there is.
Do you still have a CSA?
Yep.
That's close.
Yeah, there's my daughter's doing still a CSA. That can be you can access that online or go there and knock on the door. As of this coming weekend, they're open for Saturday and Sunday each weekend until June, and then in June they'll be open on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The store.
Can you please say what a CSA is and how it
The
works?
CSA is that's an acronym for Community Supported Agriculture, and basically I've said in the past that it's kind of like CSA is kind of like a chili. You know, there's all kinds of different chilies, and they're all pretty good. Everybody does it a little bit differently, but basically the premise is you would prepay upfront to the farmer a certain amount of money, and in exchange for that, you would get some food each week or every other week or however their particular CSA is set up. And that's how that works. And that supports the farmer up front, gives him operating money that he doesn't have to pay interest on directly, and or jump through all those hoops it takes to get operating money. I'm just trying to think. There's different ways. Like we had with our CSA in its prime, you could buy a full share, you could buy a half a share, or you could buy a farm card. The farm card was $100, plus you paid $100 to get the farm card, but that gave you all the rights that the CSA had. You could pick flowers, you could pick herbs, you got seconds on any of the stuff that was seconds, and you got a discounted price when you bought the stuff. And then every time you put $100 back on the card as you spent the money, they took $20 of your sign-up fee and put that on the card. So if you bought $500 worth of product throughout the year, you basically got your money back. It was based on a half a share, which was $500. Other guys are just doing it straight, and we set it up like a farmer's market. Everything was in units, so that week a whole share might, let's say, be 12 units. So that you would come in and it would say, 1 pound of beans is 1 unit, 1 pound of mesclun is 1 unit, 6 tomatoes is 1 unit, 6 zucchinis is 1 unit. And then you could just shop with your units. If you had guests coming, you wanted more salad, you got more salad. If you wanted more zucchini, that's a great thing. You can take more zucchini. And so that's how we did that, and that gave people choice, and it allowed us also to be open to the public and sell to the public on a smaller scale or a bigger scale, however it went.
Thank you.
From our experience, mostly my daughter, but we had the CSA both in the city also for some time, and basically you have to be open to get on a weekly basis whatever is produced by the farmer. You don't control that, but I can tell you, top quality vegetables and fruit sometimes, and depending on what they have. So it's a great way to support your local farming, because basically, yes, you're trusting them that at the end of the season you will get your money's worth or more, and certainly quality produce. That's.
So I just want to say one thing. It's a little more money for organics, but the nutrient density that you get in organic produce well outweighs paying a little bit less money, because I know my buddies would throw stones at me, but that are commercial production growers, but you cannot compare the nutrient density of an organic product grown on healthy live soil as opposed to, like feeding it basically like vitamins. It just doesn't compare.
Healthcare facilities in and around, I forget which city in Wisconsin, actually offer discounts for people that were members of CSAs, because they recognize that if people are eating good quality produce, local produce, they're gonna be healthier.
Milwaukee, that's where it was.
So I have a chemistry question. When organic fertilizer is broken down into the soil, how does that differ from commercial fertilizer being broken down into the soil?
So it's kind of like, how can I put this? Drinking a fresh juice, grape juice, or drinking like a flavored, you'll get hydrated. Like a flavored grape juice, it's not real, 100% grape juice. You'll get hydrated, but you're not going to get the stuff out of that flavored, juice that's not all natural that you would get out of the grape juice, the real grape juice, the antioxidants, all these other things. So it's similar to that. The cation exchange that goes on in the soil and with the soil biology is allowing the plants to take up the best stuff that's best for them. Whereas when you have natural nitrogen in slow release is so much better than ammoniable nitrogen that's going to give the plant the growth, but it doesn't build the cell structure that it would build if it had the real thing. I don't know if that answers it or not. No? Huh? We can get real technical if you want.
Just referring back to my organic chemistry class.
Yeah, I wasn't very good at chemistry. I was better at physics.
I wasn't very good.
I don't remember my chemistry, but I can tell you one thing. When I grow tomatoes at home, and I cannot live without tomatoes every day. I mean, just, that's part of my what do you call it, my routine. And sometimes you get tomatoes that they look wonderful, nice color and so on, but they taste to nothing. And when you grow them in soil you put some compost and so on, it's totally different.
I think it's true that a synthetic fertilizer will have just a minimum number of carefully controlled chemicals that they've identified, whereas a natural fertilizer will have a lot of the other stuff in there that is what we actually value in our taste, that you won't get with a synthetic fertilizer.
Okay, we are getting to the end of our hour and a half. So unless there is more questions, I just want to thank both Jay and Pete for taking the time and sharing with us that experience. I mean, I think it's really illustrative of what it takes to be a farmer and a dedicated farmer. I was for a little while, but that's many years ago.
Have a good one.
It's so long ago, I grew up on a farm.
Do you know Marion? This is Marion Walton. It's her husband who's my mentor. Her husband Jack. There's something else. We got one good together. He was a pioneer. We tried. Thank you very much. I wasn't so